Today we're going to talk about shepherding and what it means to be a shepherd and the awesome responsibility we have as shepherds. The most pervasive culture in the Bible is agriculture, and it's built around the sheep, it's built around the cattle, it's built around the weather, it's built around all the aspects that relate to agriculture, if you will. 85-90% of it is related to that. And God uses the shepherd as a wonderful model. And of course, to understand what a shepherd is, you have to understand the culture. And our language relates to our culture. And when our culture changes, then our language changes to keep up with it. That's kind of wonderful how these two things go together. And so we today, in our modern world, have to kind of go back to the culture in which this was set up. I was kind of amused, first of all, and then challenged. As a matter of fact, when I was in the Philippines, and I was meeting up with the man who was the bishop, who had just come back and was just going to become the top man at the Theological College for the Christian Missionary Alliance. And I said to him, this morning I'm going to be talking about the shepherd. But I said, it's interesting. I've traveled the world in many places. I see sheep up in Nepal. I see them in India. I see them across Africa, and certainly across Australia and New Zealand, sheep everywhere. But I said, I've never seen sheep here in the Philippines. Do you have any sheep here? He said, yes. I said, really? I said, well, I've never seen them. Where are they? He said, we have 2 in the zoo. And I smiled at that moment. And I thought to myself, how can you teach the 23rd Psalm if you've never been with sheep? How can you really understand that the scripture says, he leads me beside still waters? And I've seen some lovely devotionals on the still water bit, but do they know that sheep never drink from running water? They always go to still water. So the shepherd has to find still water. Amazing. So as we look at the sheep and the shepherd, I'm hoping that it will have its implication for us in our modern day and bring us up to speed. So part of the context, and it's kind of interesting because I have a nephew who has a sheep farm. I think he has about 12,500 sheep. So he doesn't even understand what it is to be a shepherd leading the sheep, nor does he have an understanding what it is to name his sheep. That would be a little bit out. And so we have to kind of also go back a little bit. But it's very interesting to realize that God chose sheep in a very special way. He chose the lamb to be very, very special. We don't have time to look at all of these things, but as you yourself begin to think about the culture, it's amazing the things that you learn how God put things together. Great Britain has the lion, and Russia has the bear, and you have an eagle in this part of the world. I'm always kind of concerned that he's trying to hold two things together and it doesn't. Anyway, that's something else. But they're all looking for strength. And God said, I'm going to talk about the lamb. And within the culture, amazingly interesting, a shepherd was at the bottom of the totem pole. And when they had any kind of a court case, a shepherd was never allowed to give any kind of information. He wasn't used as a witness. A shepherd could not be a witness. That's how low they were. And yet, when God wanted to tell the great story of the birth of the Messiah, he didn't go to the Roman emperor. He didn't go to the Jewish leadership. He went to shepherds. Let them be the witness. He turned it on its head. Isn't that amazing? God used the shepherds right back there. I think that for my reading anyway, the 2 greatest leaders in the Bible, apart from our Lord, was Moses and David. I think unquestionably for me, Moses was the greatest leader that we have a record of. And to think that God was thinking to build it around sheep and the shepherd. In Isaiah, he said, like a shepherd, he will tend his flock. And Jeremiah said, I will give you shepherds. God said, I will give you shepherds. And then he tells about the shepherds who'd lost their way and how significant that was and how condemning he was of that. And then he said, behold the Lamb. And so the Lamb became the operative top of the mast. Very, very special. But when you think of how God went about this, it really is encouraging, should be to all of us. We take Moses and we say, well, what a privileged guy Moses was. And secular history tells us that Moses actually was a general of one of the armies of Pharaoh. So he learned how to be a general and how to deal with an army, how to take them out and to fight and do all those good things. And God says, well, you may have been brought up in all the knowledge of Egypt. You knew what square root was and root 3. That was all part way back there. And he lived with the massive pyramids and all the engineering. He lived with that. God said, no, that's a marvelous start, but that's not what we need. And for 40 years, he took him to look after sheep. Isn't that amazing? And I'm going to tell you that he learned a lot from looking after sheep. The first thing he learned was that sheep are the dumbest animal that there is. Amazing. I had the privilege of during my teenage years on a sheep farm. So I worked with my dad and the farmer, and we just really enjoyed the sheep. But I didn't know that I was going to learn a lot of lessons that were going to help me later on in leadership. Interesting. Sheep are very dumb. Oh, they do some dumb things. I remember how sometimes the dog would come from the city and they'd drive the sheep, and the sheep would be driven by them, and they just run in front of them, and they'd come to a fence. And they just go, they'd pile up and pile up and pile up, and then go over the top. And the problem was we would come when we found them, and there they were, all just lying there still. Not enough sense to get up and walk away. We'd pull them out and find some dead at the bottom because they're suffocated. No, sheep cannot look after themselves. They need a shepherd. So that's the first thing to remind them that God has made it so that He's going to give us sheep, and that we have an awesome responsibility to be looking after them. Back in those days, as we have recorded, the shepherd knew the names of the sheep. And I think here is a wonderful thing for us. We need to know our sheep. Let me just talk about that a little bit. What does it mean to know your sheep? I enjoy going up to my sister's farm, where my nephew has now all these sheep. And so when it comes lambing time, and a ewe mother will die in birth or whatever, they'll bring the lambs back to my sister Ruth. And Ruth will look after them. And she feeds them bottled milk, and then she feeds them oats as they get bigger. And just was there recently, and she said, we'll go and feed the pet lambs, as she calls them. Well, some of them are really big now, and she's still looking after them. And she goes out and says, look, what's this? And so she puts the oats out in the tub, and then she watches them as they come up. And she says, look at that one there. He always, or that sheep there, always waits for the others. And then he'll, look at that one there, he's a bully, he just keeps nosing everyone else. She has them all tagged. As a matter of fact, she all has names that are kind of cute, the names she gives some of them. But she knows every one of those sheep, and she knows that every one of them are quite different. And I think to myself, if you've got 100 sheep, they're all different. If you've got 1,000 sheep, they're all, if you had enough time, you'll find out that all of them have got characteristics that are different. They're beautiful. And so when we are dealing with the sheep that God gives us when we're leaders, whether we're parents, or whether we're a department head, or whether we're looking after a Sunday school class, or we're preaching to a congregation, they're our sheep, and every one of them are different. And here's a little statement that I really kind of learned from my dad, and I want to pass it on to you because it's very powerful. You know, it goes like this, and you might like to write this one down. There is nothing so unequal as treating everybody equal. There is nothing so unequal as treating everybody equal. Therefore, it is important for us as shepherds to know our sheep at different levels. So let me just walk you through some of them for you to think about. people have different learning styles. And as leaders, we need to think about that. And part of why we're spending so much time in helping us to build relationships here in the course is because relationships and building relationships are absolutely co-equal, if you will, with being a shepherd. Because the more you know the sheep, the more you're going to be able to minister to the sheep and lead the sheep. So we need to know their learning styles. Some people are very global and they just want the big picture. They just want you to tell it. Others want to let me read about it. And I just want to have it in a very linear way. That's how they learn. And so when you go home and you want to teach a stack and teach this picture, or you'll find out you've got some who are very linear and they say, why don't you just give it to me in a written form and I'll learn it that way? And others say, oh boy, we like this global, but we can imagine those pictures. It's interesting. So you find that you're dealing with that. Then we have learners who are fast learners. We have slow learners. One of the things you have to learn about sheep is that you really have to drive sheep at the speed of the slowest ones, not the fastest ones. They'll be dropping off as you take them on a long journey from a back paddock up to the shearing shed. All the ones can't go at that speed. So you have to, as shepherds, know the speed that you can introduce and you can help them as they are growing in the work that you have for them. I've been amazed to know that Billy Graham, for instance, as he prepares his messages for whether it's 300 people, 3,000 people, or like, I think the largest crowd he ever had was in Australia down in Melbourne, where we had something like 130,000 people. Back then, what a day. I happened to be there that day. Marvellous. With all those people, from judges to janitors, what do you think would be the age level that Billy Graham prepares his message for? What age level? Tell me. What would you think?
12.
Very close, Scott. 13. 12, 13. Isn't that amazing? He wants 30 years old. So he knows they're all sheep, but he knows that he has to work with the little ones, and if he gets the little ones, he gets the big ones. So that's a good thing to think about too. And I think in our own organisation, where we've got a lot of academics, there's a tendency to try and shoot at that level up there when really we need to be shooting and helping them as sheep to come down there. There's another very interesting thing that I think relates to the bell curve. And I'm just going to pop these up here with the help of Pete, because I think this is very significant for us in understanding our sheep. You know, we have the bell curve, and that's used from everything from the size of shoes to the size of dresses. In other words, there's always going to be 10% that are small shoes. There's going to be something like 80% that is the average in the middle, and then there's going to be 10% of large. And they actually calculate that. That's the way it's kind of come together. And so what we have in a given audience, however, are these three elements. On one side, we have the innovators. 10% are going to be innovators. You'll understand this is very generic, but different groups will have different averages. But just to give us a feel for it, then you have 80% who are going to be maintainers, or the status quo, if you will. And then you're going to have 10% who are the inhibitors. So you've already learnt which is going to be the green light sign and which is going to be the red light sign, right? So we'll pop that in too, just for fun. So one is going to be that way. The innovators are going to be the creative people that you're working with. The maintainers are going to be the people who are just very happy to go along with how things are. And so they're the status quo, if you will. And then we have those who are on the other side, who are those who are the opposers. I submit to you that for every group of people you're working with, at one level or another, you're going to find that kind of percentage. doesn't take you long to realize that the maintainers in the middle, they're looking to whichever is the strongest side of whether the creating side or the opposer side. Isn't that interesting? When I was president, I wrote a letter to our leaders around the world, and I said, I've got an interesting question to ask you. I said, how much time do you spend with the people who are really negative and opposing your work? And the letters came back. It was interesting. And they were saying, we're spending so much time with the opposers. These are the people who are griping. These are the people who are unhappy. These are the people who don't want change. He said, we're spending our time down that end. You know what happens? When you spend your time down there, then the status quo people are looking where you're putting your emphasis, and it's down that end there, which is the opposers end. He said, no, I suggest to you that we need to be looking for the creative ones and working with them. And then the others will follow. And some are going to say, I don't want it, and they're out. That's okay. But we want to bring the flock with us. And I learned that because, we drive a mob of sheep up to a gate, and we want to put them through into some new pasture. Beautiful green pasture there. It was all bare. There was nothing left in this paddock here. And get right to the gate, and then a couple would turn and run this way. The whole mob would go. Every time. And I looked at it. And so I want you to invest in the creative end. We've talked about that and how powerful that can be. So be encouraged with that. I think that we're living in an age today where there's a lot of terrible confusion about men and women, and it's very, very sad. But God has made us different. We've got different strengths, we've got different things to bring to out in the world. They're saying we'll all be just the same. The big word is equal in Australia. We just finished a vote. In just a few days, we will know whether the whole country has voted for same-sex marriage or not. Unbelievable stuff has gone on. And will go on. But I want to tell you, the reality is that we're not equal. God has made us very different. And, marvellous the contributions that God can make as women and men work together. I have a little statement which is kind of interesting because I've travelled the world and I've been to very remote places, and I have to come away sometimes and say, some of the best men in Wycliffe are women. That's true, I happen to believe it. I've worked with some very amazing women, and I've been blessed and learned so much from them. So, but let's not forget that. Let's not try and go by the world standard, so we've all got to be equal. Let's do it God's way. There are different temperaments. We're incredibly different in the way we're made. And I just want to mention one book that was a very wonderful help to me. It's a book called The Temperament and the Christian Life. We used to deal with temperament in the early Townsend Institute. We don't have time anymore, but I urge you because, you're going to be working, and you're going to find in your team you've got the cholerics. They're the colonels, they're the generals, and they don't care who they walk over. I mean, they've got to get their job done. That's the cholerics. And then you get the sanguines. They're the fun of the party. Just love to have sanguines in your team. But if you're a shepherd, I want to tell you something. The sanguines are so excited to get started, but they're not too excited to get it finished. And you need to know their temperament because you need to get alongside them as a shepherd and say, we need to finish this. And you've got a great gift. And then, of course, you have the phlegmatics. They're the lovely people who are just laid back and they're easygoing, and wherever the wind blows, they're going. It's just lovely to be around. And then, of course, you have your melancholics. Well, they're kind of different. They're the people that I've got to be careful here. It's kind of pretty grey days and raining a lot. And, how desperately we need them. They're our bookkeepers. They're the people who can do the analysis of the plan. Oh, we need them in the team. But sometimes we have to work very hard as shepherds to bring them on board. But study the temperaments. And it's great to do it because you'll discover that your children have got different temperaments. Help you as parents to know how to deal with them. Because if you've got a sanguine, always hard to finally get things done. You got the choleric, he's the driver and walks over the rest of the family. Just think about that, because that's true. Added to that, God has given different gifts. And we need to know what the gifts are, because He's given the gifts so that we might be able to be successful in the job He's given us. And that's really wonderful. One of the things that Ruth and I like to do is to invite young people home. We do a lot of this, just to have hospitality with them. And one of the questions I like to ask is, what is the gift that God has given you? Ephesians 4 makes it very clear that He gives a gift. And most of them don't know what their gift is. They don't know. So we tell them what we see. And I mean, some of them end up crying. Never knew. Others have got to kind of scrape off the ceiling to get them out the door because they've just suddenly discovered they've got a gift. They're so excited. Want to get out and start using it. I think, isn't that beautiful? Who is responsible for deciding what the gifts are? Well, it's not me, myself, because you see, I need others to help me see the gifts. And the Apostle Paul used that beautiful, beautiful picture of the body. I remember coming out of one of the Kenyan embassy in London once, and it led out into a dark lane. By the time I got out, it was very dark, and as I started to walk, I could hear footsteps coming behind me. And I looked and I saw this guy with a big coat, and I walked faster, and he walked faster, and then my head said to my feet, "It's your turn." And away we went. Out that thing, I never run so fast in my life to get out of that place. My head said to the body, I need to think right now. And that's how it is. We need to be looking and knowing what the gifts are that God has given and implementing them to the full and encouraging them so that they can be used to the maximum. One of the things that I think is also very wonderful to think about is how people like to be loved, how love is expressed. And if you've read the book by Gary Chapman, he talks about 5 different ways of expressing love. Some people love touch. Some people like affirming words. That's very important. Some like giving gifts and receiving gifts. Others like serving, and others just like time. Yeah. That was very helpful to me to find out that extra component with my wife. It was a great blessing. And I didn't read it until my daughter came to me and she said, "Dad," she said, "I've read this book. Have you read it?" I said, "No, I haven't read it." She said, "I think it saved my marriage." And he's a great guy, my son-in-law, senior pastor of the church that I'm attending, as a matter of fact. And that's a great joy to me. But anyway, she said, he used to bother me because he said he would come home at night time and he would come into the kitchen and he'd start kind of taking over the cooking. And he said, I'd come and he'd be always just doing the washing and putting it in the machine. And I was thinking to myself, this is my home and this is what I'm supposed to be responsible for. And then she read this book and discovered that his gift was actually of serving. And she said, I relaxed. And so he comes home now and says, there's the washing. And he's glad he does it, and he's a great cook. He's such a cook. And it was such a blessing. She relaxed, he relaxed with her, and they had a very wonderful marriage, I have to tell you. But it was crucial at that particular time. So think of, because your children like that, your deacons are different like that, and so is your team. So that's another thing for you in knowing your sheep. There's a lot been written about a servant leader. Quite frankly, and I've read a lot of those books because I'm so interested in leadership, but I think somehow there's something missing Because I would submit to you that a servant leader is a leader who serves by leading. That's a little bit different. It doesn't mean that he's the one that has to switch out the light after everyone's gone home and goes into the kitchen and has to do drying up because it's a family day at the church, and so he's seen to be serving that way. That's great. God wants us to be able to do that too. But we mustn't lose sight of the fact that if we're a leader, we're to serve the people by leading. And I think that is a great encouragement to me to realize that that's what we're called to do, and not to be less than that kind of leader to be out in front. That means we've got to spend time. That's why we need to know the vision. That's why we started there, and we can build on that. But it's really wonderful when you think of how God himself set the stage for this. In Psalm 78, I love that psalm because it really gives the picture. In verse 70, it talks about the fact that God chose David, his servant, and took him from the sheepfold. He gave him an opportunity to really learn what it was to be alongside a sheep. Imagine that. The greatest king that Israel had, and his training was with sheep. He learned sheep. You can't read the Psalms, but see the very things that I've been talking about embedded in his messages. And he tells that this is what a leader is all about. And then we read on, and it says, from the care of the ewes with suckling lambs, he brought him to shepherd Jacob, his people, and Israel, his inheritance. So he shepherded them according to the integrity of his heart. Love that word. It's not in the Bible enough. I mean, it's not translated well enough because sometimes it talks about someone being blameless. It's really talking about being integrity. And so here he says David was a man of integrity. And a man of integrity is integra, the Greek, which says it's the two halves of what you believe is what you do. And when they come together, that's integrity. David did that. And when he failed, he got it right by coming back to the Lord. But then in the early part of that chapter, it actually says that God was the shepherd. And it says, he led his own people like sheep. And he guided them in the wilderness like a flock. And he led them safely so that they did not fear. But the sea engulfed their enemies. Again, a picture of God totally caring for them, providing for them every way. That's what a shepherd does. I want to tell you there's a cost in being a shepherd, however. And the cost is that many times we have to be quite lonely. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Because sometimes when God gives a vision, you can be very lonely in bringing it to the people and helping them see the vision. It takes time, and you can be very lonely in those situations. Sometimes for a leader in our kind of work, many of us have had to be away from our homes an awful lot. And that can be a painful experience too. And so we need to think about the cost. There are many people who never really reach their fulfillment because of the cost. And so think that we have as a cost to carry the weak ones. It's our job. We have to look after those that are sick in ways. Sometimes that's with mental things we have to cope with, sometimes it's physical. Sometimes it can be lonely in our doing the very best and it being not accepted or certainly not receiving the affirmation. I remember how my dad and I would go out, and in our particular part of the world, there in Australia where we had the sheep, we had a lot of foot rot. And foot rot is something that where the actual hoof begins to rot because it's got so much water in the ground. And we'd have to get these sheep in, and we'd get down there, and one would hold them, the other would be cutting the hoof and cleaning it out, putting the medicine in, and we knew that they would be right in a little bit. But it was a stinking job because literally the foot was rotting. And you know, interesting thing is, there we are, we finished doing 100 sheep, put them out there. Never once did they stand up and say, hey, that was great, thanks a lot, Shepherd. I can think of times where I've been kind of lonely and I thought, I wish someone would just say, that was great. But they didn't get it. But that doesn't stop us pressing on as shepherds. But sometimes that happens. And we need to be ready for that too. here is a fundamental. In God's economy of things, he built a shepherd 1 metre, 4 feet taller than sheep. Why? Well, that was so that the shepherd could see the wolf coming. And the shepherd could look out and see where the best grazing area was. The shepherd could see that they're coming to some noxious weeds, and he would have to keep them away from that. We have to do that too as shepherds. We are responsible. And sometimes we have to say to someone, you can't eat that kind of stuff. You can't read that kind of stuff. You shouldn't be looking at that kind of stuff. That's poison. That's going to kill you. And we can't afford that. So you can extrapolate that in your own mind. There are things that we have to do to say, no, you can't do that. That's not acceptable to you nor to the team. That's a shepherd's responsibility. And it's a heavy one, but it's so extremely important. So I finish this time by saying, let me give you 3 patterns of life. Number 1, the pattern for life is to keep the commandments. To keep the commandments. He who has my commandment and keeps them, that's the man who loves me, and God will manifest himself to the man who keeps them. The second one is the pattern for ministry. The pattern of ministry is to be fishers of men. And the pattern for leadership is to be a shepherd. Listen to these verses as we close. Peter was told that he should be a fisherman of men. And yet when he finishes his letter, he says, as an elder, I appeal to you, care for the flock of God. He got it. He said, entrust it to you. Watch over the flock diligently and willingly, not grudgingly, nor for what you will get out of it, because you are eager to serve God. And Paul finishes up, the great church planter, he says, leaving Ephesus, he said this, so now beware, be sure that you feed and shepherd God's flock, his church purchased with his blood, over whom the Holy Spirit has appointed you as elders. Translated, shepherd. If you want to do something very, very special for your furlough, go and stay 2 or 3 weeks on a sheep farm. Ask the shepherd to teach you. Watch the sheep being shorn, never making it good. God bless you and give you a passion to be good shepherds. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the high calling you've given us, and give us the strength to know that you have called us to be leaders and to be shepherds, and that we are responsible for the sheep. And you've said in Hebrews that we're going to give an account for the sheep that we're caring for. That's awesome. It's too much apart from you. Please help us, the great shepherd of the sheep. Help us to be good shepherds of the sheep. Amen.